everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I am Mariana and I interview the brightest minds of physical therapy. So if you want to learn from the best PTs out there, start right now by subscribing to this channel and clicking on the bell so you don't miss anything. Give us a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. So today, our guests are Jim Millard and Jack Miller, and they will talk about Mulligan. They are both experienced physical therapists from Canada and accredited teachers for the Mulligan concept of manual therapy. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Jack, hi Jim, welcome to PT Pro Talk. How are you today?
Oh, really good there, Mariana. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and share with your guests.
Nice to meet everybody, and hello from Canada. Thank you.
So I have two big stars of Mulligan today here with me from Canada, two instructors. So let's start with Jack. Could you tell us briefly about your background? I know you've been here before. People may know a little bit about you. So just tell us briefly about your career and then after Jim, okay?
Sure, I'll get started. So I'm the dinosaur. I did my physio training at the University of Toronto in 1980. Yeah, that long ago. And so still a physio, still enjoying it. And, you know, I tell the story a lot, but I thought that the training I got was pretty good, but I didn't really have the skills that I was looking for. And so I decided to continue the journey and ended up spending 6 years in New Zealand through the early 1980s. And completing the New Zealand Manipulative Physiotherapy Association's Diploma of Manipulative Therapy. It was at that time that I got to take instruction directly from people like McKenzie, but also I had one of my prime instructors was Brian Mulligan. And so I was there kind of at the formative time, right at the time when Brian really was doing this kind of transition from his original focus of mobilizations a la Kaltenborn, and then discovered the use of mobilizations with movement and started teaching that to us during my schooling there. And kept in contact with Brian when I brought my New Zealand wife back to this place that she still calls a frozen wasteland. And so then in 1994, I got in contact with Brian, and he invited me to the first meeting of the Mulligan Concept Teachers Association in the United Kingdom. So I was the only North American to be there. We had a lot of Europeans as well as myself, and we created the Mulligan Concept Teachers Association. And that was really, you know, a formative time because the process or the whole concept was still very young. People didn't know about it, and it took a fair bit of work to kind of get it recognized. Because at the beginning it was kind of thought as heresy, like, no, you know, you can't do that. That's not what we do. You know, how dare you teach that? And so, you know, it got a lot of pushback at the beginning. But our goal back in 1994, when we first started the MCTA, was to have it recognized and basically put ourselves out of business. And our goal was to do that in 10 years. Now, we didn't quite get there, but we're getting there in the sense that when we teach our Mulligan courses now, a lot of the young physios coming into the courses say, "Oh yeah, I know that," or "Yeah, I know that." Or, "Hey, thanks for reinforcing that. I learned that at school." And so again, you know, the goal originally was to get it into the entry to practice level, get it recognized, and that has been an ongoing process and will continue to be for quite some time. So we're not out of work just yet, but I am filling in the unemployment forms as we speak. So that's kind of my background, and then Jim will tell you about himself and what we're doing here in Canada.
Yeah, I apologize. There's a little construction that just came on all of a sudden, so it might be a little loud for a few minutes with me. But hey, I'm just going to piggyback onto Jack's story, because I started to work with Jack in like 1991, and as he started to get on and into the teaching with Mulligan, I was just the right place at the right time and started to assist him, and certainly made my career, and I've been helping him out ever since, and became a full-fledged teacher in 2007. And we both teach all over Canada. We've both taught all over the world, and it's just been a gift. And I think one good thing we've really done here in Canada, and Jack can really go into detail on this, is we don't want to just teach a bunch of techniques. We want people to embrace a concept and, really take this and evolve with it and make it their own. And, not just learn from rote memory or from a recipe approach. And you'll see a lot coming out of here in the next couple of years on that theme. So I'd like to think as Canadian teachers, we've really embraced this clinical reasoning and this whole relationship concept of, where the people science is, that just makes Mulligan such a beautiful middle ground between where manual therapy kind of meets pain science. And it's just a brilliant world to live in.
So I think it's probably hard with every technique in the beginning. You have to go through a lot of barriers. I heard many stories from McKenzie, all of these guys that they try to do something different, and in the beginning everybody's against it, so you have to slowly let people know about it and little by little build the technique. So I imagine how hard was the work in the beginning, right?
Yeah. At the beginning, again, there's, certainly, change is always threatening to anyone. And, I'm sure there's going to be a new concept that's going to come in, and Jim and I are going to be the same in the sense we're going to go, no, how dare you do that? And so that's just human nature. But yeah, at the beginning, I would fly out to small towns and teach a course for 10 people. Because that's what you had to do to get things started. And I think one of the things there's two things I think that really have helped this particular concept blossom. One is obviously the research that is supporting this, and it's gotten to the stage now where I've just given up trying to keep up with what's being published. And it's not just simply case studies. We start off with simple case studies, and it's grown from there. But on to now, full randomized control trial studies, and people are now realizing that hey, there's some good science supporting this, and being evidence based. I think though the thing that really made people sort of start embracing this is the immediate change happening right there on the clinic floor with your patients. And people like, Robin McKenzie and Brian Mulligan, with all due respect to my mentors and teachers, they're not scientists. So they're clinicians. And to them, that one patient got better on that one day. See, there's proof. There's science right there. That's all they need. And then they're right. That the N of one still has value to us. And I think again, what has helped the acceptance of this is those two things. One is therapists seeing this immediate change right there in front of them, not after 10 weeks and then, gee, I guess the patient may be better, but instantaneous change right there on the clinic floor, and durable change as well. And then being supported by good extant literature. I think those things have really been important to having this become more accepted by our physio peers. Jim, any comments on that?
No, I think we've hit like anything, change is slow, but the research has kind of caught up to the whole concept now. So I don't think there's any dispute. We're evolving, and like Jack said, initially it was a lot of just case studies and a lot of just Brian trying to explain things in a real old biomechanical model, because that's where we evolved from, right? But now it's nice to see, and I keep kind of coming up with pain science. It's nice to see where the science kind of supports things from a neurophysiological perspective too, and it makes things really exciting.
Right. And I think the thing that also, we have to appreciate that nothing is new, and anyone that says that there's this brand new original idea that they came up with themselves, well, I think they're really not being realistic, because as what we're doing is we're building on those that came before us. And my first thing one of the things that I did is I wrote an article for our Canadian Orthopedic Journal back in 1986. And I called it, the Mulligan concept, the next step in the evolution of orthopedic manual therapy, because that's all it is. It's another step. And if we think that's the last step, then again, we're very wrong, because there's going to be the Mariana concept is going to come out soon, right? Because you will take that next step that we're blind to. Because all that, with all tremendous respect that Brian Mulligan did is he had a patient one day, a young lady who had a painful injury to a digit, to a finger. She wasn't able to flex it because of pain. And he did the usual manual therapy techniques that he was taught by Kaltenborn, and it didn't change their pain. Now, he did do a mobilization, and by chance, he held it there and said, well, can you bend your finger now? And the patient's finger bent without pain. She says, my finger bent. And he says, well, of course. Now, he has absolutely no idea what he was doing on that given day. But he looked back at it, and he realized that what he had done is taken basically Kaltenborn style mobilizations and then reincorporated the functional aspect of the patient's activity with it. He did a mobilization with movement. So it wasn't something, heretical. It wasn't something that was, against the law. It's just something that no one had ever done before, because they hadn't thought of it. Now, of course, people, I'm sure, say, well, I did that. I did. Well, yes, I'm sure you did. But what Brian did is he was able to then start to build on it and start to experiment with this idea in other parts of the body, and saw that it wasn't just with the finger. It happened with the knee, at the neck, at the elbow, etc. And so he was able to grow it out from that one experience with that one patient. And if you stop and think of it, that's absolutely no different than what Robin McKenzie did with his Mr. Smith. And a lot of people don't actually know is that Brian Mulligan and Robin McKenzie grew up in the same small town in New Zealand, 1 year apart from each other. And they went to physio school 1 year apart from each other. And so again, to me, there's a razor's difference between what Robin McKenzie is doing from a clinical reasoning perspective and what Brian Mulligan is doing. There's really not an awful lot of difference. It comes down to the difference between physiological direction of preference, McKenzie's ideas, and accessory direction of preference, Mulligan's ideas. It's really not an awful lot different at the end of the day. Jim, any thoughts there?
No, and I think things have changed and evolved a little bit, but when you look at two guys working together in the same city, Wellington, New Zealand, at two ends of downtown, golfing on Wednesday afternoons, kind of chief instructors for the New Zealand Manual Therapy, group. Yeah, I think we've been on a pretty similar trajectory, and the research is maybe having us, move apart a little bit, but yeah, there's not a lot different for sure.
Something I'd like to circle back to, Jim sort of brought it up, and that's one of the things that we really try to focus on a lot in the programs that we deliver here, is the clinical reasoning side of it. Because, you can go on YouTube and you can see a lot of these Mulligan techniques, and that's good. We support that. And there's a lot of people teaching it. And that, again, that's been incorporated now into our Canadian orthopedic manual therapy system. And we're very happy that that's the case. The problem is for us, or the concern we have, is that what's not been incorporated yet, or what you don't get, is the clinical reasoning side of things. Seeing a technique being done on YouTube, being taught a technique just as a standalone technique in a course is great, but do you really understand how to use that? So again, the analogy I use is you can go to the driving range and learn how to hit that golf ball with your driver. You can just hit that ball as straight as an arrow, and you can hit it really, really far. But do you know how to play golf? Do you know that the idea is not to hit the ball far? The idea is to put the ball in the hole. And so I think that, learning, the skill of how to hit the ball is really good. And that's important. And those psychomotor skills is what you get by going to an in-person course delivered by a accredited Mulligan teacher. But again, the thing that I'm going to speak to for a few moments, if you don't mind, is some of the clinical reasoning that supports that. And again, I use a lot of analogies because I like them. They kind of work for me because I think I'm kind of a simple guy. And so this is how I think. So I use this analogy a fair bit. And so you're cooking spaghetti, and it's there in the pot, and it's boiling away, and you're getting hungry, and you think, gee, I'm really hungry. I got to eat this dinner. And so you think, oh, the spaghetti must be cooked. And so you dump the spaghetti out of the pot and the water, you dump it into the colander, and you rinse it off, and you grab one of the strands of spaghetti, and the old-fashioned way of doing it is you throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. And that's how you tell if it's spaghetti's cooked. You throw it on the wall. If it sticks, it's cooked, right? But what if you throw it on the wall and it doesn't stick? Well, what you got to do now is you got to get the water back in the pot. You got to get it boiling again. You got to put the spaghetti back in the boiling water. You got to cook it some more. And so that's retroactive response, isn't it? You don't know until you have done the thing and then go back and retest it to see whether or not it's worked. And with tremendous respect, and again, it's not one system is right or wrong. The traditional orthopedic manual therapy system built on Jeff Maitland's work from Australia follows exactly that principle because it follows a test, treat, retest paradigm. And so it's reactive clinical reasoning. So the patient can't turn their neck to the right. You lay the patient down, you do this stuff to them, then you sit them back up, and gee, they still can't turn their neck to the right. Or they can. So again, you don't know if what you just did has been a benefit to the patient until you get the patient back up and do your retest with that system. So Mulligan, to my mind, and I think this is the key here. This is what really gets me excited. What Brian Mulligan, I think, gave me was a long-handled pasta lifter. And I get to reach into the boiling water with that pasta lifter without getting my hands burned. I get to pull out a strand of spaghetti, and I get to throw it on the wall, and it doesn't stick. And you know what? I keep the water boiling. I keep the rest of the spaghetti in the pot, and then I can retest it later on. And now if I pull it out and it sticks, well, hey, spaghetti's cooked, and now I can dump it out and serve it. And so that is not so much as reactive clinical reasoning as it is real-time clinical reasoning. Because now we've moved from a test, treat, retest paradigm to a test, treat, retest paradigm. So I know that I'm in the right place, doing the right mobilization, in the right direction, with the right grade while I'm doing it. How? Symptom response. Symptom abolition, because the patient can't turn their neck to the right. I put my thumbs on a certain segment. I do a glide. It's pain-free. They still can't turn their neck to the right. I take the glide off. I move up a level. I do my glide. And now they can turn further. Oh, but gee, it still hurts. I slide up one more segment. I do my glide. And now they've got full pain-free rotation. Well, guess what? I just found out which segment's involved. I found out what direction the patient prefers. So there's my directional preference, no different than McKenzie. And I found out what grade to use. And gee, that's an awful lot like Maitland, isn't it? And so to me, from a clinical reasoning perspective, the reason I think that Mulligan has really gained in popularity, the Mulligan concept, is that real-time feedback, because the patient says, wow, how did you do that? While you're actually doing the technique itself. And that does a bunch of things. It gives you informed information about, again, directional preference and grade, etc. But it also, I think, shows the patient that, look, you don't have a tumor. You don't have a fracture. You don't have this pathology. You don't have this terrible disease process. And what does that do? It takes down their fear. And they start to be able now to start to engage to their barrier. So, okay, it may have only done 10 repetitions of the patient right there and then in the clinic, but I'm going to send them home with now a self-treatment. And what have I done? I've taken down their fear avoidance. I've reduced their kinesiophobia. I've empowered them with a self-treatment program, because let's be honest, what we do in the clinic is a drop in the bucket. And what we're really trying to do is get the patient now to build their own self-efficacy. And so they start to now engage that functional impairment themselves. You bring them back 2-3 days later, you retest them, and hey, look, they're still doing well, they're still making improvements. Now, you may choose to repeat the technique again, or you may just simply be able to now reinforce the patient's self-treatment and move them on yet further towards independence. So to me, that's a good segue into now Jim's component that he's going to speak to about how we work with the patient to build their confidence as a team. And it's not so much working, and I'll steal Jim's thunder, not working on people, working with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jack nailed it. The key here is no pain. And that kinesiophobia, that fear of movement because of pain. And as good Canadians, we're going to have to talk about Ron Melzack right now. And Melzack, from way back in the 60s, back in MIT with Patrick Wall, kind of made the gate theory of pain, or came to that conclusion. So Melzack was a neuropain psychologist and probably one of the founders of what we would call pain science. So now if we fast forward to the 90s, Melzack's introduced what he calls the neuromatrix. And the neuromatrix is just a pain perception theory. Everything's just a theory, but it's really interesting. So you've got this central nervous system we like to call the washing machine, and we have these inputs coming into it and these outputs leaving it. And pain's a really interesting thing. So you've got these inputs of past life, past history, the cognitive part of what the heck's going on, what's the meaning of this pain. You've got the sensory input of all the afferents from your, external body, your visceral system, all coming into your CNS. And you've got this affective part, the limbic system, the background neuroimmunochemical soup that just homeostatically drives us as human beings. And all that comes in, and what comes out is pain perception, an action program, how I move, and just the level, the stress hormone level of how much cortisol versus how much dopamine, oxytocin. So it's really interesting. So we get people in pain, they're scared to move, and if the therapy produces more pain, which sometimes it does, not Mulligan, sometimes it does, it really changes then that pain perception and that action program, right? I'm going to limp more, I'm going to guard more. But when we can do a technique, and here's the interesting thing, it all stems on how we communicate too. So part of this concept is all the narrative, right? The no pain narrative, the, no fear, no damage narrative. But the interesting thing is the afferent inputs. So where traditionally manual therapy, like Jack talked about with Maitland, might just be mobilizing and stimulating mechanoreceptors, type 1, 2, and 3, and manipulation might get type 4, right? Or basically, or type 3, if Jack will fix me on that one. And if we're just doing muscle work, you might just be stimulating the nervous system via the Golgi tendon organs or the muscle spindles. The biggest organ in the human body is the skin. Maybe through massage or some type of needling, you're stimulating Ruffini endings and somehow tapping into the nervous system. And what's really interesting, now we've got a way with the Mulligan concept to combine those. I can affect mechanoreceptors at the same time as Golgi tendon organs and muscle spindles because I can mobilize and move. And it's really interesting. Throw in the skin, which we underestimate how much is going on there, and 1 + 1 + 1 is 10. And that's where neurophysiologically we see these changes so quickly that sometimes can't be explained by mechanics alone. And that's where the research comes in. At the ankle, at the shoulder, tends to be really biomechanical. At the hip, at the elbow, tends to be really neurophysiological. So that's where the research has been great. But yeah, you can kind of, without causing pain, with the right kind of inputs, the right kind of symptom modification, you can really change somebody's ability to move with no pain. And think what that does cognitively. Think of that to the buy-in. Am I going to listen to the therapist and do my homework? Absolutely right, because I'm a live walking example right now of what used to hurt doesn't, and my movement's better. So I'd like to think in the right situation, we just get there quicker with Mulligan over less visits. And I'm biased, I admit that, but the neural matrix to me is a nice pain model that really kind of makes sense of where this manual therapy meets pain science.
I think also, I'll throw in there that, is that it's not just the Brian Mulligan's ideas. If we start really exploring this idea of symptom modification as a concept, we'll appreciate that basically what the McKenzie concept, again, a New Zealand system uses is symptom modification. You're changing the patient's pain, and the patient says, that makes me worse. Well, don't do that. Well, that makes me better. Well, do some more of that. If you stop and think of what Jeremy Lewis, now living in the UK, but originally, again, another New Zealander, does with his shoulder, it's symptom modification procedures as far as how to change the patient's real-time pain. What is Peter O'Sullivan, now living in Australia, but again, guess where he's originally from? Yes, New Zealand. And so what all these people are doing and are using is this idea of real-time feedback with the patient. And I think, again, what Jim's pointed out there is taking down that fear of activity and fear of movement. Can you imagine you're the patient laying there, and I'm your physio. I say, okay, now, Mariana, I want you to really relax and just calm down a little bit. Now, this is really going to hurt, but I want you to relax. Yeah, right. Okay, that's gonna really help to de-stress you, right? Hey, I'll put on this apron so the blood doesn't spurt too far on, get my clothes all dirty too. But relax, okay? So that's option one. Or I say to you, hey, look, Mary, we're going to try doing this thing now. Now, if it causes you any discomfort at all, you tell me right away. We'll stop right away. Okay, no pain. Okay, now good. Now let's get you to try turning your neck. And again, if it causes you any pain, we're going to stop right away. No pain. And what does Brian Mulligan say to his patients as he was working with them? And I had the pleasure of coming and be able to spend time at Brian's clinic and when I lived there and watch him work with his patients. And he'd be saying continuously two words, and I'll throw out my fake New Zealand accent here if you don't mind. No pain. No pain. That's no pain. Now he was asking the patient, no pain? But I actually believe, with all due respect, he was telling the patient. And there's nothing wrong with that if it helps us to get over the patient's fear of activity and fear of movement and start to, again, empower their functional activities. So there's nothing wrong with reprogramming them. And if we don't embrace that placebo, we're missing out on something. It's not just all placebo, but certainly what we don't want to do is ramp up the nocebo. And I think this is where Jim wants to probably jump in on as well, because I see him want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? I mean, you are your best treatment technique. We are, and we can kind of use communication and build a therapeutic alliance. And when you give the patient the locus of control, your trust factor just happens so much quicker, and change only happens at the speed of trust. And if I'm lying down, face first on a plinth or a couch and someone's pushing on my back, what control do I have of that? Stand up, can I move any better? Not really. Okay, go back down, let me do some more. Versus if I can see and feel it at the exact moment and I'm in control of the movement, that's just huge. And call it placebo, whatever you want. That's just called science, and it's real, and it's okay. It's not used car salesman sugar pill stuff. It's called neurophysiology, and it's called belief. And if you listen to my beliefs and you know what my expectations are, and that becomes part of this treatment paradigm, things always go better. And a good therapeutic alliance drives better outcomes, better satisfaction, better adherence, better everything. And I think that locus of control, giving autonomy to the patient in pain, really comes out in this concept more so than anything else that I use. And hence, I think you just get there a little quicker.
Yeah, I think that's what is amazing about Mulligan, because you see the results right away. So you are doing the technique and you see the results. So I think there is no other technique that I can think of that does the same thing. So I think that's impressive, and probably like the patients, they get super impressed too. So it helps on like them really doing their homework and trying to help on the treatment and participate on the treatment. So they see the results, they see that they're getting better, they see that they move without pain. So I think that's what it's so fascinating about Mulligan, that I like so much.
Just like I like analogies, Brian Mulligan likes acronyms, NAGs, SNAGs. And one of his favorite acronyms is PILL. And it sums up what you just said there, what Jim said too. So PILL, P is for pain, it's pain-free. I, it's instantaneous. The change in your symptoms and your function should happen now, while I'm doing it. Not in an hour, not in a week, now. So it's instantaneous. And the last two letters in PILL is long lasting. It's not just while I'm doing it, but it's durable change as well. And so that's what we try to teach is PILL, because we're looking for that with our patients. And I suggest, that your listeners and viewers also, look for those instantaneous changes, because that's what gets patients and you excited. I can finish up most of my courses, my talks, with saying to the people, look, I've been a physio now for 40 years, and I don't have to go to work on Monday morning. I get to go to work on Monday morning. And why? Because I can help people right then and there on Monday morning. And again, patients will now start to comply with their home program. An interesting study done quite some time ago, back in the 70s, showed that a physiotherapist giving a patient a home program, when an independent person then interviewed the patient later on, only 30% of people actually said they did their exercises. And I think most of them were lying. Okay, so let's get that one straight. Did you floss your teeth this morning? You were told to. So people don't. So why don't patients comply? Well, often because the exercises hurt. Okay, or they don't know how to do them. But also another thing is this little sort of favorite thing of mine is we give people too much. Another study showed that if you give persons 2 exercises, 5 or 8 things to do, which group has the highest compliance rate? The one with 2 exercises, 5 exercises, or 8 exercises? Well, we all know the answer is it's 2. And so, what we try to do within the Mulligan concept is show the patient that they can change their symptoms or their function right there in the clinic with you doing it with them, but then show them how they can then do that at home themselves. So in the neck, with a simple towel, for elbow, with a simple doorway, and show them right there in the clinic. Well, look, I just did this for you. Come on over here and let's get you to do this yourself. Good. So you see, does it hurt? Oh, it doesn't hurt now. Okay, good. Now go home and do that thing that doesn't hurt. So you get now, as opposed to a avoidance strategy, oh, it hurts again to turn your neck to the right. Well, don't turn your neck to the right. That's an avoidance strategy. Or, all right, it doesn't hurt it hurts to turn your neck to the right. Hey, let's get it so you can now turn your neck to the right without pain. Good. Now, when you go home, guess what I want you to do? Turn your neck to the right. Okay, so again, we move from that disengagement avoidance behavior messaging into an engagement function-based messaging to the patient. And again, I think as Jim pointed out, that really comes by building trust. They start to trust you because you can change their pain for them, and you show them they can change it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think, again, that self-care, I mean, we don't empower themselves, and when you can see and feel you can move without pain, that's very empowering. And then that's where that, to be honest, one exercise we probably give, two at the most, that the treatment becomes the exercise. And then that literally the self-treatment is everything. We don't fix people. We help facilitate movement. We're movement facilitators, right? We're coaches for the most part. People kind of help themselves. And this concept is really brilliant about that. It doesn't set it up where I'm fixing you. It really empowers you to, in the future, you don't need me if this comes back, because if we were successful, you know how to treat yourself. You do that first, and then if you need my assistance, we'll kind of go from there. So that's the brilliance of it. And with the Mulligan concept, you're not going to see somebody 62 times. You're going to see them 6 times, and things should be, if manual therapy is the answer, or mobilization with movement, it's going to happen quite quickly. And we still need to get people strengthening and during neuromuscular facilitation and all the other stuff that keeps people better. But come on, let's be honest. What do people really want? To move with no pain.
There's a really good infographic floating around Twitter right now, and it's built on an article that was co-authored by, again, New Zealanders, Jeremy Lewis and Peter Sullivan. And it really, what it emphasizes there is what do patients really what are they looking for? Are they looking for a cure? No. What they're really looking for, patients are really looking for a plan. How are you going to help me get from where I am to where I want to be? And if that involves just simply education, well, then that's great. I mean, that's all we need to do. So let's take that hierarchical perspective. If just simply educating the patient is going to get them to where they want to be, that's the plan. But it may be that we need to layer on top of education some form of a movement activity. Call it I don't like saying the word exercise, because that people go, oh, exercise, I don't do exercise. So, I call this is your pain controlling activity. This is your movement enhancing activity. And this is your function enhancing activity, as opposed to your strengthening exercise, because everybody hates exercise. It brings you back to high school gym class. Oh God, I gotta go play basketball now, and so, giving them that plan, whether it be exercise or activity, and then if appropriate, hands-on treatment. And again, I want to point out that it's not a one is right and the other is wrong. Do Jim and I use traditional orthopedic manual therapy? Absolutely. But when do we do that? Well, usually when stiffness is the barrier. Why? Because it's not pain is the barrier to function movement. It's just stiffness. So traditional orthopedic manual therapy is a great tool if it's more of a stiffness barrier. But what do you do if pain's the barrier? Well, you're just going to push through it. No pain, no gain. It becomes a physiotherapist yet again. No. So when pain is their function limiting activity, think Mulligan. Why? Because it's built on no pain. It's just that simple. So again, do we use muscle activity later on? Absolutely. Motor control activities? Absolutely. So, I also say patients, don't you, when I'm teaching a class, don't you dare call me a Mulligan therapist, because I'm not. I'm an orthopedic manual physiotherapist. And again, it's the proverbial tools in the tool belt. And I suggest that your listeners think of it that way. So, don't become a Mulligan disciple. Don't become a Smith disciple or a Jones disciple. Each of these people have something to offer. Does Brian Mulligan to use a McKenzie's system? Well, absolutely. Of course he would. Why wouldn't he if the patient presents with that particular symptom presentation? Why would you not? And would Robin McKenzie use Brian's mobilizations with movement? Well, why wouldn't he have? Again, they grew up together and only practiced about 5 blocks away from each other as adults. And so, of course they would. And yes, they used to go play golf quite often together on Tuesdays afternoons. And so anyway, so again, I'll leave it as that my suggestion is your listeners may want to explore more about the Mulligan concept. If so, good resources that are available are the website bmulligan.com. It's got great resources there. Our own website, mulligancanada.com, if you're interested in the programs that we run here in Canada. There's also MWMUSA.com is another really good website that Americans can resource for instruction in the Mulligan concept in the States.
Yeah, and shout out to our teachers in the States. I mean, Mark Thompson, Eric Dinkins, and their crews down there. And, Rick Crowell, Julie Polino, Don Reardon, Russell Woodman, Pat Black, people that have just, led the way for a long time, Amy Bennett. So there's Dave Mikos. There's lots of resources down in the States for sure. And if I forgot anyone, Brian Folk, who's retired. So, there's lots of resources, so certainly seek us out.
Or you can come up to Canada, but don't come
your money goes a lot farther, but I think the border's closed right now for some.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to come in February. It may be a bit of a challenge for you guys, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I don't like winter, so So I think we talked a lot about Mulligan, a lot of information. I had all my questions prepared, but I think you answered all of them during our conversation. So people can just find the answers through the lines. Any other advice or any other tips for our guests that you would like to give? Go, Jim.
Mine is never stop learning. Never stop challenging yourself. The day you think you know it is the day you should quit. I'm still a student in life, but also in physiotherapy, and trying my best to continue the journey.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, again, at the end of the day, we don't fix people, change the narrative. People help themselves. We facilitate movement. And, if you're going to look at resources too, I mean, I wouldn't be able to speak that narrative or practice in this model without the work of Louis Gifford and his great series on aches and pains. We are in the people business serving therapy, right? We treat people, and let's kind of keep it that way. And everything is in the context of people first, therapy second. So I just want to reiterate that. You guys are your best treatment technique. Grow your communication skills, grow yourself, because you can't give away what you don't already have. And if you grow yourself, and literally with empathy as the gate, compassion as how you serve, everything is going to help people, because ultimately you're helping them help themselves. So that's my close.
Thank you for all the great advice. And I think we pretty much nailed everything. Anything else that you want to add before you end this?
No, we're good.
No?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for participating and giving all this knowledge to our listeners. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talking to me today.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you for your opportunity.